Welcome, everyone, to the RPG Goblin, a TTRPG exploration podcast. I can speak. We are a podcast that makes it fun and easy to learn TTRPGs so that you're not intimidated, and because there's so many awesome games out there. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about Shadowrun, specifically Shadowrun 2nd Edition. And I am really excited about this because I've heard about Shadowrun all over the place, but I'll be honest, I basically have no idea what this game is about. And that is why we have Ben here on tonight, who is the GM, the Pink FoHawk actual play podcast. And Ben, if you would like to give yourself a more formal introduction and tell everyone, I guess, what you do and where they can find you and all of that cool stuff. Go ahead.
Thank you, Willow. Hello. And hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm Ben. I am the GM of Pink FoHowk. We're an actual play podcast. And we play, as has been mentioned, Shadowrun 2nd Edition, the best edition. And so, yeah, we've been doing it for now. We have 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. We're extremely lazy. So we only have about 23 episodes up out of 2 seasons in about a year and a half. But it's a fun time. We really lean into, and I know we'll get into this, but Shadowrun was written in 1989. Mm-hmm. And so 2nd Edition was written around 1991 with a lot of those 80s, that 80s attitude, mm-hmm. that punk rock from that time infused in it. And so we really lean into that in our podcast. We make sure everything is through that lens of everything needs to feel like it's 80s and over the top action movie. That. And so it's a good time.
That is a fantastic vibe. I love it. And so where can people find your podcast?
You can't escape us. Oh. We are everywhere. We're on, you could, just search Pink FoHowk. We're on every podcatcher. I guess they call them those podcast services. And we're on all the social things. We're on Twitter and YouTube. And we actually, again, we'll get into this more, but our YouTube channel, we've been doing a 2nd Edition book club.
Oh, yeah, I actually saw that on Spotify when I was looking at your show. I'm like, this looks really interesting.
We did an audio version. Yeah, we did an audio version too because they get kind of long. Mm-hmm. But we have the videos as well up there. So you can catch us anywhere. Just search Pink FoHowk and then obviously minimize any actual Pink FoHawks that come up in the images, and then you'll find us.
Perfect.
We're about 3rd and 4th in line after all the actual Pink FoHawks you'll see, and then you'll find us.
Yeah, you'll find us one way or another. Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, that is so good. And I think honestly, I want to start off this episode. Sometimes I'll do a little bit of talking back and forth with the person, experience in TTRPGs and stuff like that. But I am just so curious of what Shadowrun is. So I want to just start this off with, can you explain what Shadowrun is for me and everyone else listening? Because I am so insanely curious, and I've almost been this is the moment I've been waiting for all week. I'm all right, nice. let's see what this is finally.
I can't wait to let you down. No, I'm really excited that like I was telling you before we really started here, you don't know anything about Shadowrun, and that is so perfect. I love that.
Yes.
What a treat to get a blank canvas to work with here. But
absolutely.
Yes, in a nutshell, Shadowrun is a tabletop game system that was written in 1989, and it was sort of fusing cyberpunk, so what you would see in Blade Runner or any, all of those kinds of Neuromancer. They took all these influences from these super seminal cyberpunk, movies and books and media, and then they were what if you merged magic with that? So it's almost like this D&D with fantasy races and magic.
Okay, yeah.
And so, and that's kind of what it is. It's just sort of this mix of cyberpunk with magic or with fantasy and set in the future.
Oh, of course.
as dreamed from the 1989 perspective. So the technology is hilarious. It's all now we look back and go, "That's ridiculous." There's pocket watch computers that are massive and all these cool things. But the thing that really reaches out. I mean, I'll show the book here for anyone that hasn't
which is
seen
such a cool cover. I love it.
The vibe of it is just so just that gritty punk feel, and low life, high tech is what
Mhm.
they, the cyberpunk sort of mantra of like what it looks like to like really slum in this future world with all this shiny new tech and stuff. And like,
Yes.
let's tell the stories of these people that kind of live in the cracks.
Oh, that's
Um,
so cool. And
yeah,
added magic into that too, apparently.
yeah. Yeah, well, and so I learned that recently.
Mhm.
We've been doing our second edition book club, and what's really cool about that, I didn't, I kind of posed it on Twitter. I was like, "Hey, let's do a book club. We read through this book together, or whatever."
I love
And
that.
like all these people like flooded in and be like, "Cool, I bought a book," and I was hoping someone else would do it. Like I was
Mhm.
like, I would join if someone started one, and then
Oh.
everyone's like, When are you going to start it?" So I was like, "Oh my god, I got a podcast. I can't do this." So then, I kind of was pushing it off. And then Tom Dowd, who is co-creator of Shadowrun,
Mhm.
he wrote the first edition and the second edition,
Oh, that's so cool.
and novels for Shadowrun and source books and all this stuff. Um, he he friended me on Twitter, which first of all was like I felt like I died and went to heaven. But then he was like, "I'm in," and he showed his picture of the first print of Shadowrun.
Oh,
And then
that's
I'm like,
so cool.
I was like, I got to do this. I got
Yeah.
to do this now. And so through that, we've done 6 meetings so
Mhm.
far, and we've just gone through different chapters of the book. But what I learned, sorry, going back again, what I learned from him was that they were writing this book in 1989. They
Mhm.
wanted to make a cyberpunk book. There was
Mhm.
like this book. I don't know if you know William Gibson. He wrote Neuromancer. There's all these really cool cyberpunk novels that he'd written. And you mentioned Blade Runner earlier,
Mhm.
like these movies and these books that were like, oh my god, cyberpunk is so cool. Let's
Yeah.
make a cyberpunk TTRPG.
Mhm.
Um, they got to work. They wrote out the bones of it.
Mhm.
It was going to be called Technomancer.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
And then the book Cyberpunk, like the game, the RPG game
Oh,
Cyberpunk,
yeah.
hits the market. They were like, oh shit, like this, they just beat us, like we're
Mhm.
screwed. And then Jordan Weissman, who was sort of the owner of FASA at the time, the company that created Shadowrun,
Mhm.
had like this fever dream, and like he was in Tokyo, he was like in Japan, and he had this like dream of elves on motorcycles, on Harleys. And he was like, I got it. Here's our pivot. Let's add magic.
I love that.
And so Shadowrun was born. Like they're like, okay, how do we do this? And they just like merged it to make it different enough to like
Mhm.
go on shelves at the same time as Cyberpunk. So it's kind of a cool, happy accident of like,
Yeah.
oh my god, your chocolate fell in my peanut butter. Your peanut butter fell in my chocolate. Now we got Cyberpunk and fantasy together. It's pretty cool.
No, I love that, and especially, like, I mean, I feel like any good game comes from, like, a fever dream, but
So well put. Exactly. Any real good session comes
yeah.
from a fever. Any D&D session that is memorable comes from a fever dream.
Yeah, anything within this hobby, it's usually a fever dream.
Yeah.
No, I love that, and even being able to, like, "Alright, we still want to do this, what do we do to make it different?" And kind of, pushing and trying different ideas, like, "Yeah, let's see what we can do." Also, Richard, he
Crash, crash, crash.
he's doing his thing. But yeah, no, I love that a lot though. Like, because it's so easy to almost have that be like, oh man, because someone else just came out with a game just like this,
Hmm.
we can't do this at all, and kind of almost giving up at that point, but still pushing forward. Like, what can we do? And coming up with
Right.
that idea, like put fantasy in it. Especially since I feel like in the 80s a lot of fantasy stuff went crazy as well. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of with that. Why not mix these elements together, see what happens? Absolutely fantastic. And so
Yeah. I mean, you
I
had D&D as like that was the
yeah.
mother of all of it. Then you have the cyberpunk game is like, let's slide right in between there. Pretty brilliant.
No, that's a good spot to be in. Like, yeah, let's mix D&D and cyberpunk. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's so good. And so I am curious of why specifically Shadowrun second edition, out of like how many editions are there, and why specifically second edition is the one that you have like
I
obsessed
will
with.
so anyone that knows, even if you just took a peek into like the Shadowrun subreddit, you would you would walk out of there like shell shocked, like, oh my god, because the edition wars are real and they're
Oh,
very
I'm
insane.
sure.
Um, and basically, a super brief rundown is that every edition, sort of got a little more kind of like D&D, where obviously they clarified rules,
Hmm. Hmm.
they added new rules, they did things to um, sort of help the game grow.
Hmm.
Uh, and so to answer your question, I'm sorry, I was about to go off on a big long thing. To answer your question, there are 6 editions of Shadowrun.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, lots of
and
them.
there's also an alternate rule set with
Hmm.
Shadowrun Anarchy, which was for 5th edition.
Okay.
And Anarchy was sort of a rules light alternative rule system for Shadowrun.
Hmm.
Because they were kind of reading the writing on the wall that, like, I'm sure you've heard, Shadowrun's very crunchy. Like, people are afraid to play it. We should
Hmm.
make a lighter rules system for it.
Which
And
works.
so and then to back up, what's really cool about Shadowrun is that, and we can get into the lore later. I'm trying to say, how do I say this? It builds on itself.
Hmm.
So the lore is like, it keeps up with our real time.
Oh, actually, that's fun.
Yeah. So the first edition was set in 2050,
Hmm.
and then the second edition was released 3 years later, and it was set in 2053. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
things progress in real time in the game world. So every edition set in a different time period or in a future for the decade.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of cool too. Like, you can
Hmm.
kind of the game kind of evolves like our real world does.
That's so
Um,
fun. I love that. Yeah.
yeah.
And so you can
But
actually like keep up to date instead of having like chunky computer watches where it's like, oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Some people that was a real problem for. They were just like, this is stupid. Like, we have
Hmm.
wireless internet and stuff, and I feel like, why am I playing this future game where I don't have I
Where
still have,
wireless internet doesn't
yeah, where I
exist.
have a fax machine, or a pager. It doesn't make any sense. But
Very modern.
um, many of us love that about it. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's so beautiful about it, is it's like some of us, cyberpunk is very much entwined with that 80s
Hmm.
vibe of what this future idea of transhumanism, like
Yeah, what
of
they
people
thought.
merging with technology, with what they thought the technology would
Hmm.
become. Anyway, so you asked about why second edition, and that's one of the big reasons why,
Hmm.
was that, like, to me, that is the heart of Shadowrun. Like, the third edition um, kind of started to take that situation. It was written about a decade later
Hmm.
than second edition, and it was kind of or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's 98. I'm trying to think. Maybe just 6 years later. But um,
Lots of years
they
to
were
remember.
they were already making those changes. Like
Hmm.
like we should have wireless, or we should. They were starting to make things a little more like, we should try to make this as not realistic, but
Hmm.
closer to what would make sense when we think
Yeah.
how computers work and stuff like that. And then fourth edition took that much further and was like, let's really get more simulationist with things.
Hmm.
And then fifth edition and sixth edition like kept up with that.
When
Um,
do you know when sixth edition came out? Just out of curiosity.
so I have not been keeping super current with it. Sixth edition came out, I want to say it was like 2012. It was like 2021 or something.
Oh, so real
Twenty
recent.
twenty recently. Maybe it was prior to 2020. I'm not sure, but basically, I'm not going to throw any shade, but when Cyberpunk uh, 2077, the PC game, was announced and released, and when
Hmm.
that release date was
Oh
coming, they
yeah,
also
yeah.
made Cyberpunk Red.
Hmm.
And so Shadowrun 6th edition came out at that time to sort of like try to hit that market at the same time.
I gotcha.
Um, so that's sort of, I don't know exactly the right year that
Hmm.
is, but that was when that happened.
Like that is interesting because I think of it being like an older game, and
Yeah.
obviously even if like an older game has many editions, like I just don't think of it as one being that's still like releasing like
Hmm.
in the current day. Oh, so it released in 2019, which
So 2019. Okay.
feels strange because I remember when like Cyberpunk 27 or whatever the name of the game is. I've never played it. I
2077.
yeah, I remember when that came out, and that's just concerning to me that it's been that long. Um,
Mhm. The world ended
yeah,
between then and now. So,
it is
I
true.
mean, there was a
Oh
lot
god.
of. So you're fine. Everyone thinks that. It's been like 2 decades since
Yeah.
2019.
So true. Oh lord. But yeah, no, that's so they came out with a new edition kind of riding that train. And
Yeah.
so second edition, because you feel like that's sort of the heart of the game, and there's almost like that, not even familiarity, but like that love for almost the corniness of the technology, like where it
Yeah.
is like, what they thought. Is like, is there anything rules wise that makes you choose that over the others, or are they pretty similar overall?
Willow, I get the feeling you've done this before because you're nailing. So it's two. I love it. I'm going to steeple my fingers for this because
Yes.
I feel like, it is the reason is twofold.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely that, like, that's the home. That feels like home with
Mhm.
Shadowrun to me, because I grew up playing the Genesis game, and
Mhm.
the second edition was live when that game came out, and that's
Mhm.
just sort of the feel of Shadowrun that I remember was Shadowrun, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the rules, and I have a 20-minute version of what I'm going to say on YouTube if anyone cares to see. But the rules, what sort of happened in a nutshell is that, like I said, they started to try to get more uh, realistic, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
as they progressed with editions and stuff. What really was happening was, these players that were really into Shadowrun were really excited about Shadowrun. Of course, they loved it. They
Mhm.
were like, "This is amazing. What about this? Right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, there's no. I'm trying to think of like what do I do with mages once they've played a long time? Is there a
Mhm.
way to like grow them and expand how they, you know, their abilities
Yeah.
and stuff like that? And so they would release these source books that like expanded on those rules for
Oh yeah, love
magic and
that.
for rigors and whatever, right? Like every game kind of does that.
Mhm.
Well, what happened was with third edition, they took all that stuff from second edition's source books and they
Mhm.
rolled all that into the core. So
Oh,
now
fun.
all these sort of super advanced rules and stuff are now like the base game of Shadowrun.
Mhm.
Whereas
Mhm.
before in second edition, it was a lot more like vague, like just simpler.
Mhm.
Still a little more difficult than like a 5e,
Mhm.
but not so much more difficult. Like just really kind of pretty streamlined.
Mhm.
But you could add things in from source books. Then you
Yeah.
have third edition that's like, nope, that's the core game now. And then guess what? We're going to keep releasing source books to expand it further that you
Oh
can add in.
no,
And
so
then
many.
fourth edition was like, okay, cool. We're putting that into the core and we're going to change it. But they changed a lot more things
Uh-huh.
fundamentally between third and fourth edition. So that's not quite fair. But then fifth edition, kind of the same thing. So it's sort of like these advanced rules and stuff always sort of seem to get like kind of lumped into the next core book.
Oh man.
And so so by the time fifth edition came out, I mean, Shadowrun has this reputation of being like way too hard for people
Mhm.
to play. Like, doesn't matter how much experience you
Yeah, I
have.
mean, I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
plenty.
And so if you peek into the subreddit, like that's a topic all the time.
Mhm.
People going, I've heard about Shadowrun. I'm afraid to play it. Any tips? Like, what's a good edition?
Mhm.
And that was me when I came into this a few years ago. Probably more like 8 or 9 years ago now.
Mhm.
I was asking around, like, hey, so how do I play this? And people were like, don't even try. Like,
Oh
it's just,
no.
take this other rules light game and just
Mhm.
skin it with Shadowrun, and there you go. Like, don't even try it.
Mhm.
And I was getting really frustrated. I was starting to try that. I was like, okay, what if I try this or whatever? And then
Mhm.
someone told me about second edition, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't really make sense. Like, I'm going to play an old edition and it's going to be easier.
Mhm.
But
'Cause you think of,
it's
like, D&D where it's gotten easier over time, less
right.
crunchy and heavy, yeah.
Right. And like D&D, and this is something that like there's this whole OSR movement now,
Mhm.
right? Where that if you go all the way back to like basic D&D, it's actually with the exception of the THACO or THACO or however you call it, um, that people trip up on, the rules are actually very simple because
Mhm.
they didn't. There was something about like that second edition of Shadowrun where they started to like same thing. Let's keep the complexity going because people are hungry for
Yeah.
more.
Make it
Um,
harder for everyone
Make it
involved.
harder for everyone. And then now, oh my God, it's way too hard. Let's make it easy again. Shadowrun went through the exact same growing pains.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I was like, okay, the only way I'm gonna get to learn this is if I maybe I should check out the second edition. And I tried learning third edition. I'd looked at fourth, I looked at Anarchy even, like
Mhm.
that rules light version.
Mhm.
And it was so much harder for me to comprehend.
Mhm.
And for some reason, when I cracked open that second edition book, it just felt right. Everything
Love
was
that.
like ringing true to me, and I was like, "This is so much it's an enjoyable read. Like it's
Yeah.
just like I'm reading a good novel kind of thing."
I love
Um,
that. Yes, as someone who enjoys reading source books, like
yeah,
like if it can like get you in and be like, "Man, this is like really good," just by reading like the rules and the story and the stuff that they set up in it,
yeah.
top tier.
we got to get you a second edition core book, because if you're into that the intro to this game is just incredible. It's just like it just sucks you in instantly. The lore, and no one argues with that. Everyone is like, the lore, the world, perfect. No notes. Rules, I don't know.
Questionable.
Questionable. That's that I'm always trying to be like, no, come back in time with me to the second edition, and I promise you it's much easier to learn. So there's my 45-minute. I'm sure that's all the time we have for tonight. That's my 45-minute answer to your simple question.
That's it. That's the end of the episode. We're good to go. No, I love that. And I love even like saying to other people, come back. Like, they're just because it's a new edition doesn't mean it's also the right edition for you. And that doesn't mean it's going to be the best edition overall, which there's always going to be arguments on whether or not this edition's the best or this edition's the best, because it all comes down to personal preference.
Totally.
And
absolutely.
And if second edition is the one that grabs you and is the one that makes sense to you, play that. Like, do it. Yeah, I love it. And I do want to say, I know that I was talking with Adam about this, and I saw you post it as well on Twitter, of the fact that they didn't have scans of the second edition core rulebook, right?
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing where, for whatever reason, second edition has not been on sale since it was on store shelves.
That's crazy.
Drive-Thru RPG has a ton of their second edition source books and other things, and then also all the other editions are available in PDF form on Drive-Thru. First edition you can even print on demand, which is awesome. We were all kind of scratching our heads like, why is second edition not on there? And out of nowhere, while I was doing the second edition book club with Tom Dowd, they released this first and second edition mega bundle on Bundle of Holding, and it had a second edition core rulebook PDF in it. We're like, whoa, okay, so this is going to come to the Drive-Thru RPG soon. This is amazing. and it never did. And so, while we were also talking, Tom Dowd is looking at the PDF, and he's like, this is interesting. He's like, this is a third printing of the second edition. And he's like, I don't know why they chose that. There's like still mistakes in it and stuff. And we've corrected that since. There's like 11 printings.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
I don't know why they chose this one. And so I'm like, I don't know, I look at my book, and I've got an 11th printing. And it's like kind of perfect in between, like the pages were perfect. The cover was destroyed, but in between was like pristine. And so I'm like, I would give it to them to scan if they need it. And we had someone else on the book club that was I think he was a contractor. He'd written stuff for like 5th edition, and he was like, I have the email of Jason Hardy, the line developer for Shadowrun, if you want it. I'm like, okay,
of course.
And so I just emailed him, and I told him that basically I was just like, hey, we're super excited about the mega bundle. We caught this one thing. If you want, I have this book, and you can have it if you want to scan it and make it available. And he was like, and he basically responded like, it's not, sorry, like that scan was not great. We're not going to sell it because it's not. It went in the Bundle of Holding. That was great, but we don't really feel like it's good enough to sell on Drive-Thru, or even, especially not print on demand.
For sure.
And so, so I got the green light. They gave me an address. I shipped my book out.
So cool.
So we'll see. That was about a month ago, and I know these things take time. So we'll see.
Hopefully the revamp of Shadowrun too.
That would be amazing. I would print 4 of those out and have them just in my room, so I could go to my tabletop store and like play a game with some randoms and like hand them rule books and stuff. Like that would just be amazing.
Yeah, you're like the person to get everyone to play Shadowrun. Like, all right, come to my games. I'll give you a book so you can take it back and play it for yourself.
I would love to be that guy. I need them to allow me to buy that many books so I can be that guy.
Yeah, give me a game store's worth of books.
Yeah, let me give you more money. That's what I'm trying to do here.
Please, I am throwing it at you. I'm ready.
Right. Because right now it's just going into someone's pocket that sold it on eBay. Like, you're not getting a dime for this. Like, come on.
Yeah, let me support you. No, I love that. And that's so cool too, to even, the fact that there is still community there to care and like support this game that is older, because it is so easy for them to kind of fall behind and for people not to play them anymore. But like, there are big communities that still play third edition or second edition of even like
Right.
D&D and stuff like that. So it's really, really cool. And I just love that. And as well of having an actual play podcast with it too. Like, what's even better to show people, yeah, this is how the game works.
That was a big part of it too. And like you said, like the community is so like passionate about Shadowrun. I'd never seen, I mean, I was one of them. Like I was just like, I fucking love this game. Like I grew up loving this game and it became kind of a part of me. It was how I'd heard about cyberpunk in general as a genre. Like I'd played Shadowrun as a kid on Genesis. And I was like, what is this game? This is so crazy. And so anytime I got into, I read Neuromancer, I watched Blade Runner, the movie, I watched, anything. I always compared it to Shadowrun. Like it was like, this is kind of like Shadowrun. And I was like getting it all backwards, but everybody is like that. Everyone here just like loves Shadowrun, everyone in this community. And so it was kind of tragic when I was trying to get back into it that everyone was like, yeah, trust me, man. I know I love this game. There's nothing like it, but
don't play it.
You're better. Yeah. Don't play it. You're better off trying something else. And so I started making, I started out actually with my Chris and Dan, who are on my podcast. They're players in my game. We just started a game during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I learned Shadowrun. I went through it. I was like, I got to get my shit together. And I learned it. And we started playing. And I was like, this is crazy. Like this, I could run, it's like built to be run like an action movie.
Yeah.
You can get bogged down if you let yourself with lots of rulings and stuff, but it's such a dramatic game. Like, there's so many dice you roll and everything feels huge. It's very over the top. And I love that. And so we were having a blast, and I was like, I don't really get that sense a lot of the time when I'm listening to most actual plays for Shadowrun. It's usually that very like sleek and cool, sort of like, dark shades and a black trench coat and like, Matrix feel. Whereas, that's kind of a confusing reference because that's an action movie, an over the top action movie. But the vibe was less like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like where we were playing it much more like a Die Hard, or
something a bit more
Escape from New York,
dramatic and over the top in a way that's not like, I'm cool, like that kind of.
Yeah. Like you said, the a bit the corny was your word.
And corny.
It's kind of true. It's like kind of like Predator or like that Aliens or like that the one-liners and the insane action, Predator high fives and shit like that. And so then we just decided like we'll make this a podcast, and it's been really cool because I never played Shadowrun as a kid as the tabletop game, but everyone we've been hearing from are like, oh my God, like this feels just like when I played as a kid.
Oh, I love
like
that. Yeah.
And that's been really fun. So
it's like helping people like bring back their memories of when they used to play this. Like that's just like really cool, especially since like, it's so easy with like jobs and stuff. Like I don't have time for those games and not even like with new editions when it feels like it's impossible apparently to be able to actually get into it. It's like, oh, maybe that's a lost cause. And then being able to like look at an actual play and be like, that's what it felt like as a kid. That's what I played as a kid. That's so, so cool. And actually, I would like to get into the actual like game itself. And I kind of want to start with the system. You mentioned that it uses a bunch of D6. Is it a dice pool system?
It is.
Yeah,
it uses tons of D6s.
Oh, those are a lot.
It's so I don't know how mechanical you want to get into this, but
this is a crunchier game mechanical.
Right.
I'm all for mechanics.
All right. So the way it works is very simply is that at least second edition.
That's what we're talking about. Second edition.
Yeah.
Everything that applies in this episode, everything that is said in this episode, it is for second edition unless said otherwise.
Yes. And the very cool thing is that first, second, and third have basically the same exact system.
Okay.
They just get more there's more involved. It gets more involved. But in a nutshell, I keep saying in a nutshell, but in a nutshell, it's it's for every your skills whatever your skill rating is, that's how many d6s you roll.
Mhm.
A 3 is average. 6 is a almost like Olympian, like perfect specimen.
Mhm.
You are honed to expert level. Um, and then obviously cyberware or magic can kind of tip you over the top
Mhm.
of further beyond that. Like, and so you that's how many d6s you roll. Like
Mhm.
your skill, when you do something, you use a skill. The GM will be like, okay, you're going to shoot at somebody. Use
Mhm.
your what's your firearm skill? I've got a 4. You're rolling 46s.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty
very
straightforward.
simple.
Yeah.
And then based on what you're doing, you get a target number.
Mhm.
Um, if it's shooting, your range, there's a table of the range of whatever gun kind
Mhm.
of type of gun you have, whatever that distance is will give you a target number, and you're
Mhm.
trying to hit that target number. And you can mod this is where things get a little bit crazy, but and especially in later editions, but you modify that target number can be modified by gear. If
Mhm.
you have a laser sight on your gun, it makes it
Mhm.
a little easier. If someone's hiding in cover, it makes it a little harder.
Mhm.
So that target number can scale, but the base target number is the distance.
Mhm.
Um,
I like
and
that being a
then
table too, like, make it a bit easier,
yeah,
like, being able to
yeah.
scale like that.
Yeah, and it's very it's like I think it starts at 4
Mhm.
in terms of the distance. And you get good at knowing. It's almost like D&D where you just remember like a dagger is a D4,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you just get to realize what those are.
Yeah, it gets ingrained in your brain.
It gets ingrained, there's pistols, there's rifles, there's whatever, and then
Mhm.
like the specific gun can have different benefits to it, but for
Mhm.
the most part the range is that's what your target number is. Um and then they have to roll soak, so they roll their body versus the power of your weapon.
Mhm.
And so there's no damage. There's no health points.
Yeah.
The way the game works is like this gun by default, if it hits you, it gives you this kind of wound, either
Okay,
a
yeah.
medium wound, a
Oh, yeah, I
moderate
like
wound, or
that.
a light wound. Yeah. And so your job if you get hit, you got to stage it down
Mhm.
by trying to soak it with your body and
Mhm.
roll to see if you can like stage that down to hopefully nothing.
Mhm.
Um, and then depending on how many, and sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but whenever you're going for a target number, that number or higher is a success.
Mhm.
If you're doing just a normal skill, if you're like, I'm going to go drive this car, and I go, okay, roll me your driving
Mhm.
skill. All you have to do is get one success.
Mhm. And so
You can roll.
what counts as a success? Like, what number?
So anything, if the target number is 4,
Mhm.
you're counting how many, you're checking to
Yep, yep,
see
yep.
how if you got any 4s or higher.
Okay, perfect.
Um, and if you get more, you can be just getting a better result. But all you
Mhm.
need is 1 to succeed, which is just kind of
Yeah.
cool. You're just kind of it moves kind of quick because it's
Mhm.
just like, okay, target number's 4. I'm rolling. I got no 4s
Yeah.
or
Look,
higher,
yeah, look
and
at
then
my
it's like
pile
I
here.
failed. And with first through third edition, what's really cool too is there's exploding dice. So
Mhm.
your target number, if it gets harder, it can go higher than 6.
Oh,
And
fun.
if it goes higher than 6, you got to roll a 6, and then you roll
Oh,
that 6
yeah,
again
yeah, yeah. Uh,
to see if
Kids
you're hitting that.
Kids on Brooms has that, and that's actually something I really loved when I played it myself, is, like, being able to, like, let's say, they're trying to accomplish something and they need to roll an 8 and they're rolling with a D4 and they're like, "Oh, this is impossible." No, it's not.
It's
All you
not.
have to roll is a 4 and it can explode, and then you roll another 4 and look, you made it. Like, I love that kind of mechanic,
Right.
and that's so exciting in the moment too, like, hoping for
Yeah.
that roll, like, "Come
That
on, let's get it."
adrenaline.
Yeah.
You get the whole table cheering when it rolls, it comes up, it is so dramatic
Yes.
that the dice pool and the exploding dice. And so that's basically it.
Mhm.
It's you're rolling your skill versus a target number. The GM will tell you the target
Mhm.
number, and then you're looking for just one success. With combat, it's a little different
Yeah.
because you're kind of staging or staging down damage, but that's the system.
Yeah.
Um,
Which, you know, seems pretty easy. Like, obviously that's not
yeah.
all it is, but I like even just the addition of having a table that you can use for the scaling. I think that's great.
Yep.
And that's a lot of things I've seen in older editions too, where even
Yes.
when they have some of that crunchier stuff, they will have actual tables that are like, here's how you do it. And it's like, oh, thank you. Like, making
Right.
my life easier.
Right. And just like with D&D, you can write that stuff down on your sheet,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I can write we'll like bracket it,
Hmm.
the distance range. So it'll be like, 30 to 60 meters is a 4, and
Mhm.
then 61 to whatever is a 5. And so you just kind of jot that stuff down the side, and now you got it,
Mhm.
you know.
We're good. Yeah.
But in our game, I kind of keep track of all that anyway. So my players just have to be like, okay, I want to try and do this skill.
Mhm.
What's my skill? I'm gonna
Mhm.
roll that many d6s, and Ben will let me know if
Yeah.
I succeeded or not. And so it's very simple to play
I
on
love
our
that.
game.
Though I am curious, I mean, obviously you do it in an actual play format. I assume you guys do mostly like theater of the mind type thing, not actual
Mhm.
tactical maps. Is this a game you want to use tactical maps for? Or is that just making it overly complicated and weird?
Y- No, it. I think it just like any other game. It's really depends on the table.
Mhm.
Shadowrun, what I love about Shadowrun. Oh, I'm getting into it now. What
Yeah,
I
let's
love about
go.
Shadowrun is that because I haven't really touched on this whole time, and I don't. I guess I was starting way more basic, but the premise is that you are a shadow runner, and what
Mhm.
that is that you're a criminal.
Yeah.
You're these mercenaries paid by whether it's the government or it's the corporations or it's whatever factions that are trying to get something done but like don't want to get their hands dirty. They'll hire you to do it,
Mhm.
and
Love that.
so every run you have a fixer and you've got a Johnson was what it's called. The
Mhm.
Johnson's the dude that's paying you.
Mhm.
So they just call it a Mr. Johnson, and it's this anonymous. You never know their name, and they're
I
just a
love that.
guy that gives you a job, and then
Yeah.
you try to do the job. And so, sorry, this is a long-winded answer for you, but like the job is like an Ocean's 11. It always comes off like a heist
Mhm.
almost. And so the big thing about Shadowrun is like planning your entry,
Mhm.
figuring out like doing what they call legwork in this
Yeah.
game is like talking through your contact. Everyone has contacts when you create your characters, and like
Mhm.
those are huge. Those are like you're calling up people and seeing if you can get maps for this place,
Mhm.
or if there's someone that can do a favor for you and like get you a pass to get into this building kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so maps can be, so my point is, depending on the table, they could be like, that's super important
Mhm.
because I want to look at a map and go, okay, there's our entry.
Yeah, and you can,
And
like, get
here's the,
into it where it's
yeah,
this is the best point of entry, and there's gonna be guards here and here and here. Oh, I
exactly.
love that. That's so
You can
cool.
get really into the specific, like, granular
Mhm.
with like how that map's going to go and how we're going to plan this, like an Ocean's 11 movie,
Yeah.
but then like how I play it both ways.
Mhm.
There are times where a mission I think would be really fun to give them the map and just sit back and go to town, figure out how you want to get into this place.
Yeah, how to distract a group of, TTRPG players. Give them a map and say, I like, you figure
Right.
it out.
Right. You want a break as a GM for a day? Throw the map down and just go, every now and then.
Yeah.
And that's it. Your session's over
Yeah,
in 2 hours.
plan your entry, and yeah, no, they will get so distracted, which is actually funny because, like, as you've been describing some of the stuff with like the injuries, like that, it's really reminded me, like bits and pieces have reminded me of Blades in the Dark, which is that, like, heists,
Yep.
criminals and all of that, and this is almost like, a cyberpunk, a bit more action focused, and all of that version of it. I
Totally.
love that, except Blades in the Dark is like, "Don't plan because it will be or it will
Yeah.
be like 2 hours of just planning between your
Right.
players."
That game was definitely inspired by
Oh,
Shadowrun.
yeah, I
And
can see it now, like, I never even thought about it
yeah.
before.
And it's got a homebrew, or it's got a system
Mhm.
that mirrors, it's called runners in the shadows,
Oh,
that
really?
is a Shadowrun version of Blades in the Dark. So it all kind of come full circle where it's like, there's a lot of people I think that wanted, this is a really good plug for my podcast. You said I'd be doing this throughout, and I'm going to have to do it now. But I think a lot of people were like, oh, I love Shadowrun, but like, who has the time to sit around for 4 hours and
Mhm,
look at a map and like all this like crunchiness, and we're like figuring out all this stuff. And then someone was like, I'm going to make a system that doesn't do that,
mhm.
that gets that feel of like the Ocean's 11
Yeah.
heist movie. But like, I don't want to deal with that. We want to make it simple and
Mhm,
like fun and keep that pace moving.
mhm,
So we'll make Blades in the Dark, right? And then people were telling everyone, just play Runners in the Shadows because it's what you want in Shadowrun
mhm,
without all that stuff. And I've made this podcast because it's kind of like, not exactly. You could do it that way
mhm,
with the rules as written in
mhm.
second edition. That's what we do. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, I do use theater of the mind a lot. And what I'll even do, I'll put like just mood boards up
Oh,
on
I
my
love
screen,
that, yes.
and I'll just slowly, like, I'll use like roll 20. I'll put like I'll make like a little collage of
I've
how
done that
that's,
before. It's so
you know,
fun.
and then just sort of like carve out the fog of war to like reveal more of it. Um,
That's so good.
yeah, and so I'll do that sometimes. Some
Mhm,
sessions there's not a map at all, and it's just like you just kind of, you're just using a different part of your brain. It's like I need
yeah.
to keep things simple so they can piece it together in their head.
Mhm.
And then there's other times where I'm like, here's the map,
That's
figure
so
out how you
good.
get in.
I love
And
it.
Shadowrun plays to both of those, which is great.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And that I didn't even again, I am this is why I like talking to people about games. I get to now figure out that like Shadowrun and Blades in the Dark are a lot closer than I ever thought they would be. Um
Yeah. No, it's I had to have like the Neo brain implant learning moment myself years ago, where I was just like, what the hell is all this? But
yeah,
it's
like
a
what are we looking at here? There's
yeah,
so many
exactly.
games like and there's
Whoa, I know
and
TTRPGs.
yeah, once you really get into them too, you can start seeing where like, oh, I can see where they get elements from this game and elements from that game and blah blah blah. Like it just all builds on itself, and that's almost like what you were saying with Shadowrun. Like it's even built on its own self with like adding like
Right.
supplemental rules, and it's like, oh, it gets more and more complicated as time goes on because they just keep combining it, which is still absolutely insane to me that they like do that. Like,
I know.
like how many
Well, and then
rules are in that book?
when you look at the fan base, you kind of get it too,
Mhm.
though, because it's people that, especially Shadowrun, at a certain point where people that was a badge of honor. I know
Mhm.
Shadowrun. I
Mhm.
figured it out. I am better than you. You come in. If you want to play this game, you got to know. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but you got to keep it all straight. If you want to get good. It was the original get good.
Yeah, get
You
good.
know, and so it's I think a lot of people were turned off by that or
Mhm.
turned away or just like, really, it's got to be like that.
Mhm.
And I feel like we've been kind of we've been sort of like letting people in like that have been sort of on the outside, like,
Mhm.
I wanted to play this way, but I felt like I've been told there's no way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing is, like we talked about, third edition, where that problem started to happen, the crunch creep
Mhm.
started to happen.
I love
Wasn't
that
like
name.
96, 98. I can't remember if it was 96 or 98 when that was released,
Mhm.
but from that point on, it just kind of built into
Mhm.
a denser system. And so what's kind of crazy is you're talking to these old timers, right? That were like, I've played since third edition, and I can tell you there's no easy edition of Shadowrun.
Oh, and it's like,
And
it's
they're
right
just
there.
past they're just past it. And how do you tell someone that's played for 25 years that that there's actually an older one that is simpler? And like I said, a lot of those rules were in source books for
Mhm.
second edition. So a lot of people don't remember either. They played with all those source books. So even some of
Yeah.
them that'll be like second edition was just as hard. They're kind of not remembering that they added that
Yeah,
complexity
those are
themselves.
optional rules too.
Right.
Like
Right.
you didn't have to, but because it's like I want all of the content, like give
Right.
it to me and I want to use it. It's so easy to be like that's the memory, This is
Right.
what it takes
Right.
to run this game. This is what it takes to play. Oh man.
Right.
No, that's
Exactly.
so strange. Like
It's a lot.
yeah.
It's a lot.
What an
Are
interesting
you, are you regretting
phenomenon.
this yet?
Oh no, I am not at all.
I love it. And that's to go back to sort of another thing I love about Shadowrun is the magic system as
Oh
well.
yeah,
For
yeah.
to go into mechanics, is it's got a very different magic system than what you are normally accustomed to
Mhm,
with like D&D. D&D has like what's kind of more like Vancian magic, I feel like, where
mhm.
it's like you have spell slots and it's very laid out on how magic works. It's
Uh-huh,
very
yeah.
structured,
Here
right?
here are the rules, here is how it can and cannot be used, stuff like that.
Right. Very metagamey.
Mhm,
Like, like almost not immersive in a way. You have
mhm,
spell slots and you
mhm,
have to like keep that in mind as you play. Shadowrun is and it's another thing I love about it is it's like the lore is so rich, and it's not how would I say it? It's not rooted in the real world. The
mhm.
real world is rooted into it.
Oh, I like that, yeah.
And so it's not like one of those things where, the events, you're looking at history and you're plugging Shadowrun into it
Mhm.
going, this is why this happened, because actually there's magic. No, no. It's like what the story of Shadowrun is that the Mayan calendar with the world ending in 2012, they were correct.
Oh, fun,
And
yeah.
the world ends, but not how we think it's going to end. It doesn't just, not everything just stopped.
Mhm.
A new cycle happened with the
Oh.
world, and magic reawakened.
Oh, that's
And so
cool.
it's super cool. And so like people started to get these abilities,
Mhm.
and notably in the original or older editions of Shadowrun, it was they focused a lot on like Native Americans in America
Mhm.
that were praying to Earth, or had like, you know, these, they had strong connection to the Earth,
Mhm.
started hearing answers in their songs and their, and like started
Oh,
getting
that's
actual
cool.
power,
Yeah.
and they actually secede from the America and take their land back, which I think is so fucking
Oh,
punk, and I
fuck
love it.
yeah.
They got all their fucking land back. They fight the United States military and win
Oh my
with
god,
tornadoes
yeah.
and shit. It's fucking badass. And so, um, so magic is this thing where it's like it's very immersed with how the Gaia sphere, with the
Mhm.
Earth, life, anything with living, any of us living, we all have auras, and they
Yeah.
all build together to build almost like gravity.
Yeah.
Like they mass creates gravity, like life creates this magic force.
That's so cool.
And so how mages work in Shadowrun, I fucking love this, is that there's not really much there's not really any range on
Mhm.
spells. Some of them have range, but line of sight, if I can see it, I can hit it with a spell. And I can cast spells as long as I want. There's no
Oh.
limits to how many. There's no
Mhm.
spell slots. I just want to cast magic. I just cast it. So they're super powerful.
I love it. I love it.
They're the way they're balanced is that instead of limiting their magic, the balance is I'm channeling this magical energy through my body to shoot a fireball at
Mhm.
you. That I have to roll to see if that hurts me, or if that puts me
Oh.
to knocks me out or
Yeah.
something. I got to roll drain on my magic. And so it's this
Ooh.
sort of like
Mhm.
you're kind of gambling every time you cast magic to see how you, if whether you screwed yourself or not. And so it's
Yeah.
really cool.
I like that, and that's a good way for it to be almost like a resource, but not one that you have to keep track of, but more so something that may or I guess will eventually happen. Like you may not roll high enough to
Totally.
be able to succeed on that and you get drained. That's really cool. I like that
Yeah, that's a great
direction.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like resource management
Yeah.
in the sense of like of how D&D is, where
Mhm.
it's like I got to keep track of my spell slots. Oh,
Mhm.
I cast this level spell that actually counts for this kind of this many of
And it
this
can make
lower spell
people even
slots.
scared to use those spells too, because it's like, I'm gonna run out, versus like you can
Right.
just be casting, and yeah, there's still that looming threat that something may happen,
Right.
but it's not gonna happen if you don't cast the spells. And like you have to cast the spells. You play a mage because you want to cast the spells. So you
Right.
use them and you don't have to feel bad of, oh, I used my first level slot now and I'm not gonna have it for later, and then we're not gonna be able to
Right.
succeed, and then you don't use the spells at all. And it's like, why am I playing a wizard?
Right. I'm throwing slingshot as a wizard because I don't
Yeah.
want to use
Or
my
using
spells yet.
cantrips, where it's
Or
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, shouldn't you be using the actual magic that you have? And there's nothing wrong with using cantrips or a different weapon or
No.
anything like that if you want to, but the reason to play someone with magic is to use the magic. So I like
Yeah.
that a lot. That's
You
really cool.
see in fifth edition, or I think it was at fourth when they invented the cantrip, I want to say, or I can't remember
Oh
which edition of
gosh.
D&D,
I'm not sure where
but
they invented the cantrip.
you can see where their head was at though,
Mhm,
where it's like we want people to be using magic more, so let's give them a freebie that they can just use.
mhm.
And it's a very limited magic, but
Yep.
it's something they can, you know, magic missile or
Mhm.
whatever.
Magic missile isn't even a cantrip. It would
It's
be a
not? I thought it
no,
was.
it would be a
Oh
perfect
man.
cantrip, actually.
I haven't played D&D in a while.
It's a first level
But
spell. You have to use a spell
oh
slot
wow.
on that, which is, like, fine. But yeah, that would actually make a really good cantrip. That would.
Yeah.
Petition.
You might have to
Big magic
tweak
mage.
the automatic hit thing maybe a little bit,
Or you can just
but
lessen the amount of bolts, or like you
that's
could
true.
there's ways that you could do it. I think that
That's
would
true.
actually be fun. Play D&D where you can like play D&D with the rules of you can cast anything but have a different like but just play a
Yeah.
different game. Like honestly at that point if
Right.
you're putting that
Let's
much work into it.
yeah. Let's make D&D where you can cast as much magic as you want, but it might knock you out or hurt you. It
Yeah.
is like, why don't you play Shadowrun? Why don't you just play Shadowrun?
Exactly.
Uh, but that's what's that to me is also like that's one of my favorite things about
Mhm.
Shadowrun is the magic system for that same reason. If I can see it, if the same light that's hitting my target is hitting my retina, I can hit it with a spell.
That's so cool. And so that even
So I
like
could
feels
hit you with a
threatening. Like
yeah, it's terrifying. And so there's this phrase in Shadowrun like geek the mage, which is a
Mhm.
very 80s awesome lingo. But geek the mage, like kill him first
Mhm.
because he's fucking God. Like
Yeah.
he will destroy us. And so Shadowrun 2, especially second edition, the thing that's really important in combat is speed. Like you need to be fast.
Mhm.
You need to be able to get initiative faster than everybody else. And you can actually take in second edition rules, take multiple turns before anybody else moves if you're
Oh,
fast enough.
fun.
And so you get your street samurais who are these kind of super wired reflexes people that
Mhm.
are like anime, like they can move
Yeah.
and cut people down before anyone else draws their gun kind of thing. Um, and so the mage, it's like you want to take him out before it comes to his turn because
Mhm.
once it comes to his turn, like hell breaks
Yeah,
loose.
everyone's wiped
And
out.
right, right.
Everything
And maybe even
changes.
himself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I'm
it's
going
awesome.
down, you're going down with me.
Right. And so it's a super lethal system for that
Mhm.
reason. Everything is meant to be super OP.
Mhm.
And the only thing that checks the checks and balances are that like this guy's also OP.
Yeah.
And then, and also this mage might kill himself.
Mhm.
So that's how that gets checked. That's the balance to that. And so what kind of happens with Shadowrun, which I love, is it makes you think twice
Mhm.
before initiating combat. So
Yeah.
it really forces that game loop of like, let's really think out this situation. Let's talk to these guys, or let's
Mhm.
maybe before we run down in that alley and fuck these guys up, let's see if there's an escape on the other
Mhm.
side, or you know what I mean? Like
Plan
find a way to
ahead.
like stack everything in our favor. You don't want to let them have any advantage over you
Oh,
before
I
we
love that.
initiate this thing.
Mhm.
And it just creates a much different game experience, I think, than D&D, where it's like there's a room full of skeletons. Let's walk in there and bust them.
Yeah. Let's go fight some skeletons today. Which I
Right.
like I keep hearing that where a lot of older editions do seem to have like, you know, you get into combat at your own risk. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of like older games like that. And I think even older D&D was like that too. You
Hmm.
probably didn't want to go directly into a combat situation because you don't know what you're going up against. You can die. Like
Right.
there's nothing to save you. There's magic, but like even in even in some of the
Right.
older editions, some of the magic was more
There's
limiting. I
nothing
know
to
there's
save you.
people.
That was amazing. That's the tagline. That's the tagline.
Yeah,
There's
nothing to
nothing to
save
save you.
you.
That's what they're telling us before we buy fucking walls full of books. There's nothing to save you once you start playing this game. You are
Exactly.
screwed the moment you crack that book. Yeah. Sorry, you had a point and I
Yeah.
destroyed it.
No, you're good. No, I know even with like some of the older editions, they even don't have as much healing and ways to
Mhm.
heal and ways to revive and things like that. Like it was a lot more permanent and like that was what you
Yeah.
expected. And I think that's been what's really interesting with like I would say like the free league boom. Like free league's getting super popular. Love free league myself. But like it almost feels like they're taking those aspects of some of these older games,
Totally.
making them deadly, making them like, get into combat at your own risk,
Hmm.
and that's just really fascinating. And it's I mean, this isn't I find like some older people tend to like the free league games because I think that's what they're used to with some of the games they
Yeah.
used to play in the past. Because it's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
want those gritty games that are kind of deadly and that like I feel like I'm going to die if I go into a combat situation, even if I stack it for myself. Like
Right.
it's
I
deadly.
love that. And it's cool because Free League, you can, they've like
Mhm.
Dragonbane and these games, they're old
Yeah,
RPGs. I didn't know it either,
exactly.
but like
Yeah.
I didn't know, but they are okay. It's kind of cool because it's like okay, you didn't know anything about it.
Mhm.
It's introduced to you as like a new game,
Yeah.
and now you're getting into this, and what you don't realize is that you're actually really falling in love with these
Mhm.
kind of older mechanics, how things used to work, but they're polished and they're modernized in a
Yeah.
way that's easier to understand. I'm a big fan of Dungeon Crawl Classics, which
Mhm.
did the same thing. That they're playing a very old school basic D&D almost,
Mhm.
but with 5e terminology and things that
Yeah.
are easier for us to understand that have played tabletop
Yeah,
games
almost
before.
simplify it and streamline it and make it, yeah, more understandable because some of these older games, it feels like there is a lot there. Like, there's a lot there to unpack, and so it's like,
Yeah,
I don't wanna go through all that because, it's gonna be difficult. Okay, let's play an I mean, literally the OSR stuff. Let's play an old game,
right.
but new. Let's
Right.
let's
It's
see.
so hard to know where to start.
Mhm.
on about anything,
Yeah.
like, and Shadowrun's the same way, where it's just like, it's like an old show on Netflix, right? I want to watch Star Trek,
Yeah.
and then it's like, well, there's a lot of Star Trek. Like, where do you want to start? Do you like this kind of movie? Do you like this kind of storyline? Like, there's this show, there's this. And so it's like, it is a very daunting task. And so what I love about it is, it's like, you get something like this Free League come along, and they almost make like the new Star Trek movie,
Yeah.
something that it's, if is kind of maybe a bad example, because I think Trekkies kind of hate some of the Star Trek movies, but
We don't worry about that.
it's yeah, we won't worry about that. But it's like, it's repackaging this
Yeah.
thing, this sleek new package that is just sort of introducing it in a way that, like you said, like, gets the older fans excited again. Like, oh fuck yeah, this is what I miss.
Yeah.
And then new fans going, this is different.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen this before.
This is fun. Like, yeah,
Why have they never done this before?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say, like, Dragonbane was so much fun, and it was so genuinely terrifying. Like, when we got into that room with that Minotaur, and I'm like, oh, we're all gonna die. Like,
that's what made me so excited with Dungeon Crawl Classics. Same deal. It was like going back to a time like what you see on like Stranger Things or ET when they're playing, the D&D game from back then, that like they're afraid of skeletons. Like, who the fuck is afraid of skeletons now in 5e? Like, okay, I know how many fucking hit points it is. It's easy. Yeah, I'll use my bludgeoning weapon.
It's just a stack of bones. Like,
yeah. All right. Bludgeoning weapons, everybody. All right, we're doing this. Like, not to say again, like, I'm shitting on D&D, but like, obviously you can run it and introduce that terror, and it's all in the way you present it. But it's that deadliness, like you said. It's that, like, this thing could fucking kill you. This, like, one thug on the street could kill you in D&D, old D&D, and those old games. And so I totally agree.
Yeah, it's so very interesting. And so back on topic of Shadowrun. So it's great.
Let's take a 400-foot U-turn.
Woo, I mean, it's still the same vein. It's fine. But no, just so cool. This is great. But so I kind of want to get a bit into the way that, like, characters work, and like even some of the character creation, because I know that we've mentioned like the magic and the mages and things like that. How does character creation work? Like, what are at least the basic steps of it? Obviously, we don't have to go through and make a character, but what can people like expect from it?
I love these questions, Willow. I just love them. I don't know. This is amazing.
I'm so glad.
I wish my friends would sit and listen to me talk like this about Shadowrun. My wife the love drains from her eyes when I start to tell her about this shit.
I will talk about RPGs all freaking day. I swear.
That's amazing. Yeah. So character creation is another thing I fucking love about Shadowrun is that.
Have a compilation counter of like every time you say you love Shadowrun at the top.
I'm catching a theme here. There are many ways to create characters. Is the short answer is that I'm going to go into the original way, which I really love. It's a very different way of creating characters, but it frustrated people who were used to point by character generation, or was like, just give me pools of points and I'll just make it.
I'll figure it out.
Whatever. Yeah, like I want this to feel like they wanted that like more granular control over exactly how things work. The way Shadowrun character creation works in the core is it's called a priority system.
Okay.
And the way it works is, and what I fucking love about it,
I love this passion. Like
it's nuts. It's painful. Passion's painful. It makes you prioritize instantly as you go what's more important to you as your character. So the first thing is there's 5 priorities, A through E. First is your race. You have to choose whether you're human or if you're a metahuman. If you're elf, troll, orc, dwarf. And if you're human, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but like if you're human, you put that's the first thing you decide. If you're human, you can all the priorities are available to you. If you're a metahuman, you have to fill that first slot with your race. That's the most important thing. And then the next thing you decide is if you're magic or not. If you're magical, you get magic points. If you're not, you're not. You can't develop that later in the game. You can't you can't multi-class or anything like that. You know,
Mhm.
you're either magical or you're not at character
Yeah.
creation. And the way the priorities work. So once you figured those two things out, the way the priority system works is that you have skills, attributes, and
Mhm.
resources. Those three things you have to slot into the priorities as to what you want. And for
Interesting.
where that is in the priorities, you get a different bucket of points.
Mhm.
So if you put skills as A, you're going to get the most skill points.
Oh,
You get a
yeah.
bucket of like, right? And so if you put it in
Okay.
B, you get a little less skill
Yeah.
points. If you get it in C, you get a little less. And D, it's
Mhm.
like, why even do it?
Yeah.
And then E, you can't really do E. So because that's either going to be filled with like magic or race or
Mhm.
whatever. So I guess you can do E. Sorry. But it's like it's down to like almost nothing. That's
Mhm.
not important to your character, so you don't get as many.
Yeah.
And so what kind of happens here is it starts to make you right off the bat start to decide what and you might not even know what you want to be, but
Yeah.
as you answer those first two questions, am I a human or a metahuman?
Mhm.
That's the first thing I got to decide. Am I magical or am I not? That's the second thing I got to
Yeah.
decide. And now from here on out, what do I want more of? Do
What's
I want
important
more
to me?
attribute points to my body, my
Mhm.
attributes? Do I want more skill points? I want to be more someone that knows how to do more skills, or do I want more resources? Because
Mhm.
that resources is like money and the resources is also your magic points.
Yeah.
If you decide to be magical, you get force points to spend on spells and
Mhm.
stuff. So I just love it. Like the first time I did it, it was I'm gonna warn anybody right now who's listening to this, like, oh my God, I'm gonna go make a character right now. It's not fun at first, I promise. It's very hard. At first, you're just like, it's so different.
Mhm.
And you have and like kind of like any game, you kind of have to keep going back and like reconfiguring points in
Yeah.
places because certain things affect those
Yeah.
points or whatever, right?
And
That
especially when
everyone's
you
used to
like
that.
do it for the first time, it's like, maybe you make a mistake where it's like, oh, I meant to have like actual resources for magic, and then oops, I accidentally put that into like E on accident. Like, oh
Right.
no.
Totally. And another thing that's really cool about Shadowrun is that the gear affects your stats.
Mhm.
Not all of it, but like cyberware.
Yeah.
Like that actually affects your stats. When you do something, it actually makes you either you could get dermal plating
Mhm. I mean,
that
isn't that why
actually
you want it for like to actually like,
yeah.
affect you and enhance you, I guess?
Yeah. But then that reconfigures your rating,
Mm,
right? So
mhm.
then now like, oh, maybe I don't want to put as many points into my body. I'll just make up those points with dermal
Oh,
plating and
yeah,
gear,
yeah.
right?
And
So
so
you
it's
kind
like
of
kind
are
of
flipping
the
back
back
and
and forth,
forth,
yeah.
like yeah, but it's kind of cool. And then the way cyberware is balanced is that everyone has essence.
Mhm.
Your body, like we talked about your aura. Every
Mhm.
living thing has an aura. You all start with 6 essence points, and every piece of cyberware has a uh, essence rating,
Mhm.
and you have to subtract that from your essence.
Oh,
So
fun,
when you
yeah.
get stuff, you're less whole. Your
Mhm.
body, your spirit, there's something
Yeah,
missing now.
yeah, yeah.
You took your arm off and got a robot arm. Um, the that subtracts from your essence score, and you can't go below zero. If you go below zero, you're not human anymore. You
Mhm.
die. Your spirit, your soul
Yeah.
dies. And so mages, that's how you balance mages.
Mhm.
Their essence rating directly impacts their magic ability. And so you
Oh.
don't have I see a lot of mages with a lot of cyberware because they want their strongest magic. So
Mhm.
they don't touch their bodies. They keep themselves pretty pure.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
what's cool about Shadowrun is there's no classes.
Yeah.
That's another thing I wanted to say is that it's they're all archetypes is what they're
Mhm.
called. You kind of know these sort of like north stars of where what kind of builds you could make,
Mhm.
but the spectrum is wide open on how you could be kind of like a street Sam that has really awesome gear
Mhm.
and cyberware and stuff, but also has like a little bit of magical
Mhm.
ability. So you could see into astral space, for instance, or
Yeah.
you could do certain things that would be helpful.
Mhm.
But you can kind of create anything under the sun, which is kind of cool
Yeah.
about Shadowrun.
It leaves it open, and I do like the priority list because again, or the priority like character creation, because it is like picking your
Yeah,
priorities. Like it is exactly that. Like,
yeah.
what do I want to specialize in? That's what I think sometimes we keep bringing up D&D, but it's fine. With D&D, I think it's great to have, the different classes. Like, yeah, if you're playing a barbarian, you're looking at being uh uh uh, uh, uh oh god, what is it called when you like take a bunch of hits? Punching bag, I
A
guess.
tank?
Yeah,
Like
a
a
tank.
tank?
Yes, a tank. You're
Yeah.
looking to be a tank. You're looking to be able to deal some damage, but you're mostly going to be a tank. Like that's what you're looking at when you
Mhm.
decide to play a barbarian. But what I think is funny with sometimes with D&D classes is the fact that they've created so many subclasses that let you dip into other like specialties that it almost
Yeah.
like feels like everyone's playing like variations that are similar to each other because it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm martial and can do magic. I'm martial and can do magic, or I'm magic and I can wield weapons. Like there's sometimes doesn't feel like there's specialties, and I like the
Yeah.
idea with like the priorities is that you're like, okay, magic or no, like like right off the bat,
Right.
like making that decision, do I want to deal with magic in this game, do I not want to deal with magic, and then like from there,
Right.
what do I prioritize, what do I want my role in this game to be, what do I want to be good at, and it's not just like everything, it's narrowing it down, which I think is great, niche down.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's so totally, and that's something, going that's like the new versus old
Mhm.
way of thinking in a way too, where and this also affects Shadowrun. And Shadowrun later editions, they tried to balance they kind of followed D&D's lead and how D&D was going, where it's like you're saying, like where everyone gets a chance to kind of do a little bit of everything, or uh like for like a good example was like trying to balance a fireball versus a bullet,
Yeah.
right? Where it was like, we want these powers to be sort of equal in a way. So you're not going, oh, like that fireball is like way more powerful than this sweet gun I bought.
Yeah, it's so
And
much
so, in,
cooler, like all of that.
yeah. And so, like in newer editions, there's there's a lot of effort in like kind of balancing those
Mhm.
things, kind of like D&D, where it's like, you know, trying to balance those classes
Yeah.
so that no one really outshines anyone else.
Mhm.
Like they're all kind of at the same level. They just do different things.
Yeah.
The older editions of Shadowrun were like, fuck that, man. Like if you're magic, magic, you're doing
Mhm.
crazy magic stuff, but that guy's slow.
Mhm.
So is he great at combat? Probably not compared to somebody that is built for combat.
Mhm.
And then you've got somebody who's really stealthy or a really great driver,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
the driver. And now that's his time to shine, or
Yep.
the hacker.
Mhm.
And so there's like this it's like a paper, rock, scissors type of balance to older
Yeah.
Shadowrun, where it's like, this will always beat this in this
Yeah.
situation. And this will always beat this in this situation.
They will
The
always have a
key is to
moment
try
that they're
to,
good at something.
yeah, right. And so there's an effort to round out your team, much like D&D,
Yeah.
but like to let those people, but you really just let those guys shine in those moments, because
Mhm.
that's what they're for.
Exactly. Which I think is so cool. I love when a character is specialized in something. It's like, yes, let's shine. Let's put a spotlight on you. It's one of my favorite things about my Monster of the Week game. I have a player who plays as a flake, which is basically like conspiracy theorist, and I will give him moments like,
Oh,
all right, like, yeah, let's dive into what is your character thinking right now, and I will reward theories that he makes up, because it's like, yeah, let's get like, you are shining in this moment to like show off how crazy of ideas that you can come up with right now, and
right.
it's so much fun. And actually, I would love to ask, do you have would you like to share some examples of maybe like characters that you've done in the past, or actually, I don't know if you played as a player in any Shadowrun games, or have you only been a GM?
I have played as a player um, in one game
Woo!
before this. Like anybody, we were usually, cursed to be
Yeah,
forever
yeah, of course.
GMs, especially Shadowrun, because there's not many people that want to run it.
Mhm.
And so if I want to play this game, I got to run it. But I did play, I played third edition prior to my second edition
Mhm.
game, and I had a character that was very classic Street Sam, more of an infiltrator,
Mhm.
um, stealthy Street Sam,
Mhm.
named Jesse Slim.
Jesse
And
Slim. That's a great name.
he was just a katana wielding badass with wired reflexes and guns that could, with smart gun
Mhm.
links, wires that go through his body
Oh, so
that let
cool.
him see reticules in his eyes and can shoot better, like just cool shit like
Mhm.
that. I had ropes I could rappel down buildings, and then I could
That's
press a
so
button and the rope
cool.
would dissolve into dust,
Oh
so I
my
didn't leave any
god.
traces. Um, Super cool. Like the gear in Shadowrun is just freaking amazing. Like it's like everything makes you feel like, oh God, I gotta get that.
Yeah, I
Like
want to
that's a
use
really
that.
cool, right?
That's so
Um,
cool.
but I've built all kinds of characters in
Mhm.
the hopes of playing. Some of my favorites were like I had a character called Swiss
Mhm.
who he didn't have any really great stats
Mhm.
or skills,
Mhm.
but what he had was a ton of money. Well, I chose resources really
Yeah.
high, and so he got skill wires, which are basically like a chip in a chip jack where he can put knowledge chips in his head,
Mhm.
and once that's in his head, he knows it.
Yeah.
And so I just had like these finger compartments in my fingers. I could open up these fingers, each of my finger compartments, and had different chips for different skills.
Oh,
Like
that's
you need
so
to fly this
fun.
chopper. Swiss is a Swiss Army knife. I'll just flip this thing open
Oh,
and
I
stick this
love
in my
it.
head,
Yeah.
and now I can fly the chopper. In a way, he almost ran like a wizard in D
Mhm.
and D. It was like these are his spell slots. Like he has to prepare his spell
Yeah.
list. These are the chips I brought with me. This is
Oh,
what I can do.
that's a really
It was fun.
fun way to play a character like that. Because that is what sometimes it can feel with like a wizard, I prepare these spell slots. I'm ready for this occasion. And like that is then what you are stuck with. Like, you have
Right,
to make those careful choices, and that is what you get for this entire scenario, this entire heist, whatever you're going to be doing.
right,
And then you have to decide,
right.
like, is it going to be important to have the chopper flying shit?
Yeah, right. And like you said, like the heist, it's like
Mhm.
that's that planning stage is for. Okay, so we're gonna try and steal this chopper on the roof. I'll
Mhm.
take my chopper skill wire.
Yeah.
I like now, but then okay, we showed up and you know we alerted the guards and the chopper or whatever. We were too late. And the
Mhm.
chopper took off.
Mhm.
Now I got this fucking chopper
Yeah.
chip, and I I wasted it.
Oops.
But yeah, everything goes sideways always in
Oh,
Shadowrun.
for
That's
sure.
part of the fun. Um, but yeah, so that was another one. And then also what's really fun in Shadowrun is just like the names
Mhm.
because you're leaning into that like cyberpunk kind of
Mhm.
that cheesy 80s rad dude kind
Yes.
of vibe, at least we do. And so I had like I had a girl, I had a she was a razor girl. So she had like hand razors that
Mhm.
would shoot out. And
So
she
cool.
her name was Wednesday Adams, and her Shadowrun name was Hump Day. I decided that's a perfect name for a runner.
Yeah,
Like she
yeah.
doesn't like Wednesday; it's Hump Day. So she just it was like, "Hey, Hump Day, let's do this." And she'd
That's
shoot her
so
razors out,
good.
and so we've got characters in our game. One of the NPCs' name is like Leah Landline.
Mhm.
She's a lady Landline. She was a Decker. Just playing with that stuff,
Mhm.
like the '80s mentality of how things work, is just so fun.
Yeah, just
But
have fun with it.
yeah,
I love that.
totally.
I mean, that's literally you're playing TTRPGs to have fun. Like, just have fun with it. Just embrace the
Yeah.
goofs and the themes of the time and like the themes of the game. Like I was literally just on a call with Riley from Fantasy and Foe Adventure Co.
Uh-huh.
Oh god, Friend and Foe Adventure Co. I keep thinking fantasy because we're talking about fantasy stuff. I was
That's a tough name to say
Yeah,
fast,
yeah,
though.
Friend
You
and Foe
did pretty
Adventure
well.
Co. There we go. But
Yeah.
I was talking with them earlier, and we were just talking about how it's like you need to like lean into those tropes. You need to lean into those like inspirations for these games because that's what they're inspired by. If it's inspired by, kind of that John Wick goofy, like even like I shouldn't even say goofy,
Yeah.
but over the top, like that kind of
Yeah.
theme, like lean into it and have fun with it. Don't try to be like if you want to play it serious. But
Sure.
if you want to
Yeah.
lean into it and want to even like take advantage of like they made the system for this reason, lean into it and have fun with it. Let's go. Let's
Totally.
do it.
Totally. It's true. It's so true. And it's sort of what oh man, I just lost my train of thought. You just inspired something and then my coffee ran out and I'm
Got to fuel up.
now I'm doomed. Now it's all downhill.
Oh no.
But no, no. You were talking about like the leaning into the
Mhm,
tropes and stuff, and that's sort of what I was worried about when I was I had played Shadowrun,
mhm,
the Genesis game, and it had this vibe of this very over the top
mhm.
80s, like just very over the top,
Yeah. Over the top.
you know. and then as I would listen to podcasts or watch live plays or whatever, even just looking at core rulebooks from the later editions, it all felt much more cool,
Yeah.
and sleek, and
Polished.
polished and like mysterious, like whatever. And I was like, that's cool, and that's definitely very Shadowrun, but like it's something felt different. And so when we were making our podcast, I was reading when I read second edition, I was like, oh my God, this feels exactly like what I remember. Like, this is it. And so when we were making the podcast, I'm like, we're just going to freaking lean into that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're going for. And I was a little worried because I hadn't seen much else like that out there. It was mostly that kind of cool, sleek, and that kind of became that's, if you're going to do Shadowrun, then you guys have to have the digital glitching and you got to be wearing like dark shades and be very almost over the top in a different way.
Yeah, fit the look.
Fit the look, fit the feels. This is Shadowrun. And so I was worried we're gonna people be like, they're not taking this seriously. And it's been a really nice surprise to see people that like you said, like a lot of people, that's how they play. And I think a lot of people were kind of missing that for a while. So we feel
you fill in
very
that missing
lucky
piece. I love it.
Yeah. Like, it's like one of the things I was worried about. Like, they're going to think I'm an idiot that plays like a child is our biggest strength. They're like, this is great. He plays just like I was when I was an idiot 12-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, thanks.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. I'm that idiot 12-year-old. It's so that's been really awesome. And it's actually one of the biggest compliments we ever get. Is like, that just makes me feel like, what an awesome compliment. Like that's what we all want to tap into when we play D&D. You think you watch Stranger Things, like, oh, I wish I'd played in the 80s like that, like, and played that game and got that vibe. And so when I hear people tell us like, this feels like that, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
So sweet. Cool. I love that so much. It's just, it just warms my heart. It's so cute. I love it. I do want to cover a little bit though. I want to ask, since like a big thing has been like the lore of Shadowrun, and I'd like to ask, how important would you say that is for someone to know before running the game?
Wow. Another amazing question. So that again, it's kind of going to depend on who you talk to. The Shadowrun is the lore. It directly affects the rules.
Yeah.
If that makes, it's trying to make how that makes sense. It's the lore is rooted in the rules, which I think is so cool. It's the inverse of most games. Most games, the rules are the rules and the lore is like built on top of that. In Shadowrun, it's very different. All of the rules are incredibly entwined with how the lore works. And so everything feels just, nothing else feels like it. It's all so intricately intertwined. So
you make me
the lore
read
is very
so
important.
Bad.
It's so cool. There's the beginning of the book is called And So It Came to Pass. And it's about the timeline. And everything changes from about I want to say it's like 2012 and on, when the world ended and the new thing happened. And all of a sudden, people are getting powers, and then out of nowhere, people start giving birth to dwarves and elves, and they think like they're demons.
Yeah, what
like,
a shocker!
The fuck is this? and then we kind of get used to that for a little while. Like, that's shocked everybody. And then a few years later, like, now computer technology is getting crazy, and like people are getting cyber implants. So like, okay, we're getting used to like the elves and dwarves things. Well, now goblinization happens, and people just randomly start turning into orcs and trolls. And it's like, everyone's just like, what the fuck is happening? And then this game is like, cool. All that happened. And now we're 50 years later.
Yeah.
And we've all dealt with all that. And so now you're here. And it's just like, it's such a cool, the beginning just tells you how corporations got their extraterritoriality, where they are just like, they now basically own the planet, the megacorps. And so what I would say is this: I don't think you have to know. You definitely do. I don't know everything. You definitely do not have to know everything to play Shadowrun in terms of the lore. But you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least read that intro.
Yeah.
And they do a good job in that intro. It's like 10 pages of just some of the coolest lore. And then there's like a little short story in there that gives you like the
Oh, love
vibe and the
it.
feel of how it all
Yeah.
works. So cool. And by there, you're good to go
Mhm.
in terms of lore. You don't have to keep track of like, this megacorp had this thing happen with this other megacorp.
Mhm.
Like that stuff started to get more and more specific and much more deep and you know, as the editions went
Yeah.
on. That's another reason why I like second edition so much. It's kind of still kind of a blank slate in the sense that
Mhm.
like you're going back to where they just started you off.
Yeah, and you can make up your own truths of the world and make up your own stories and things like that too.
And that's a real thank you for just driving this. The source books, what's really cool is that when they would give you source books, they'd give you a little bit more of that lore,
Yeah.
right? So maybe they give you one on London.
Oh,
The London
actually,
source
yeah,
book.
yeah,
It tells
yeah.
you. Yeah, like so there's a London source book,
Mhm.
and then there's so Shadowrun I'm getting ahead of myself. The core rule book, it's set in Seattle,
Mhm.
which is a very random place, but it's set in Seattle. And so most people play in Seattle
Mhm.
because that's kind of where the game is
I love
focused. Because
that.
like I said, the Native American nations are formed.
Yeah.
They seceded from the United Canadian and American States. Um, Canada joined up
Mhm.
because like everyone was the megacorps and everything were taking over. And so what's kind of cool is there's all these sort of Native American nations around Seattle.
Mhm.
And then there's Seattle, which is a part of the UCAS, the United Canadian American States.
Mhm.
And so there's this huge variety of countries and different terrain
Mhm.
and different ideologies all around Seattle is this little island in the
That's
middle of
so
all of it.
fun. Yeah.
So you've got this like Blade Runner hellscape in Seattle, but then you've got Tir Tangier, which is like the elves actually made their own like almost like a Rivendell
Mhm.
like place in their own nation right next to Seattle. So you
Yeah.
got that place you can go to, and you got these other sort of nations that are very different.
Yeah.
And the source books kind of develop those different
Mhm.
areas more. What's really cool about it is that it'll tell that let me get one here.
Yeah.
I didn't get you one.
Go ahead, grab
Let me
one.
see. Where's my hang on 1 second. Seattle source book. Okay. This was sort of
Ooh,
a book
yeah.
that was like, it's like, let's get deeper into what this city
Mhm.
is and what is in it. And the whole thing is written exactly like a city guide.
Oh,
It's
that
got
is so
ads
cool.
for the different places that are in Seattle,
Oh,
and
I
it's
love that.
broken down by neighborhood, and it's
Yeah.
broken down by the different areas in Seattle. And then there's all the maps in the back and tell you all about Seattle and the different places you can visit. And it's written like a real place, like
Yeah.
um, and then what's so cool about it, because you mentioned that you get to kind of pick and choose as a GM which
Mhm.
you want to choose. They're all written with that in mind, and so it'll tell you
Amazing.
this information.
Mhm.
It'll be like there's this many people in this area of Seattle, and this is the poverty rate, and
Mhm.
this is this and this and this, and then underneath it they have these things that are like Shadowlands, which is kind of like a message board
Mhm.
that are like all the information was actually uploaded to this like Shadowrun
Uh-huh.
database, and these people are commenting on it.
That's so
So
cool.
underneath you have these comments from people that are go, yeah, they say there's this many people, but they're not taking into account the people that live in the sewers underneath
Mhm.
it. That probably 3 times that many people live in that area. And then someone else says that's like an old wives' tale,
Oh,
like
that's so cool.
that. And so you never know the truth. There's this unreliable narrator that's in all the source books that kind of lets you as a GM decide who's right,
Yeah, it's almost like
and
they
it's so
present,
cool.
like, rumors for you to then
Yes,
decide what if those are true or not. Oh,
right.
and you don't even
And
have
so
to
to your
decide
point,
immediately because you could decide when your players go, like, "Oh, who knows?
yeah,
Yeah, there could be so many
right.
more people there. You don't know. Let's see."
Exactly. And it like they exactly. You let the game kind of almost drive how
Mhm.
your story goes, and the lore is for the most part is wide open.
Mhm.
They hit these really big formative moments in the timeline and the beginning of the core rulebook from there on, it's kind of anyone's guess as
Mhm.
to how things are going.
That's so
There's
cool.
information, right?
Yeah.
Like a dragon runs for president at some point, which is pretty awesome. And it
Naturally.
wins. And it wins. And that is but what are the things that lead up to
Mm-hmm.
that, right? What was the campaign like?
Yeah.
What, like, there's source book, there's actually adventures that lets you kind of help
Yeah, playing through the
work on the
dragon
campaign and
campaign.
stuff. So cool.
I'm playing the dragon
But
game, but not the one that everyone thinks of.
right, right. Um, and that's the other thing. Dragons own like corporations and
Hmm.
shit. It's like their hoard of gold is
Yeah.
different now, right? In the
I
future.
love it. Hmm.
Yeah. But that to your point, like the lore. So to answer your question, after all that, the lore is not as important.
Hmm.
It's just this really beautiful icing. Like it's the cake. It's the basic lore, which is in the first 15 pages of the
Hmm.
book, are so formative to how the game plays and how the feel of the game
Hmm.
is. But beyond that, it's just icing that you can add how you want, and you really do get a choice in what it is,
Yeah.
because the books are kind of laid out in that way that lets you sort of decide like who's bullshit in this exchange. Is it, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um,
No, I love
so
that. And it's even a good way to just give you ideas. Like you don't even have to follow the lore stuff. You could just read it and be like, "Okay, what would be a really cool scenario that I could run my players through that's inspired by maybe like
totally,
3 times the city living in the sewers?" That would be really
yes,
interesting. Like, okay, let's explore that bit and see what would happen there. That would be a really fun thing to center a campaign around. Like that's a
totally.
fantastic way to get ideas, especially with it all being optional. Because I think um, there are people that get really intimidated by games where the lore is so important, and unless you
Hmm.
already know it, like I know the One Ring, like people who are super into Lord of the Rings love that because like they know all the lore and they can get right into it and
Hmm.
all of that. But I know some people when it comes to games like Vampire the Masquerade where it's super lore heavy, and some people are like,
Hmm.
I don't even want to run it because there's so much lore you have to consider before
Yeah,
even like
I had
running
all
it.
those worries.
Hmm.
I had all those same worries with Shadowrun, and I wasn't sure. I was like, I can't tell you exactly when, or like, even to this day,
Hmm.
right now, I'm talking to you. I've played this game for a year and a half. I have an actual play. I've talked to the creator of Tom Dowd. I've done all these things, and I still couldn't tell you exactly what Renraku sells,
Hmm.
the mega corporation. I'm not sure exactly what they're known for.
Hmm.
I know what As Technology
Hmm.
does. I know some of the other ones, but like I don't know all of. I can look that
Yeah.
up. Like I know that they're a megacorp. I know that they have a pyramid in downtown Seattle, the
Hmm.
arcology. I know that stuff. But if they go, let's go to the Renraku arcology, I'm like, oh shit, I need to probably
Yeah,
read up on what Renraku is. But like, I don't have to know it to
exactly.
run the game.
Yeah,
You
if you
know,
need to know it, you'll know it, but
right?
from there, you can know that
And
it exists.
right. And to your point, what's so nice about, I have all these source books, and the reason why is because they're written so creatively.
Mhm.
They're that Seattle source book's a Seattle source
That's
book. It's like
so
a
good.
city guide.
Yeah.
And then there's Shadow Beat, and that whole thing is about media in the sixth world is what it's called. Like
Oh,
what TV programs are on, what is news, what entertainment,
what
sports.
what
There's all
odd, like,
kinds of, tells you
source
all of it.
books, but, like, so
It's so
like, it
cool.
is so creative. Be
Absolutely.
creative and have fun within, like, world building. Like, that's just really, really neat. I adore
Totally.
that. I love it. And so
Most of them are divorced from the rules in a
mhm,
way. Like you can use any of them for, like you said, I like source book. I can point to a page
mhm.
and I'll see something on it that'll inspire a
Yeah.
session. I'll be like, that's, oh shit, I didn't know that. Or that's really cool. I want to focus on that. Or and then with the Shadow Beat, it's the same thing. It's
Mhm,
like there's like kind of like Hunger Games style games that are
mhm.
happening in the Redmond Barrens, which are kind of like the old, really run down part of Seattle in
Mhm.
the in Shadowrun. Um, and I've gotten into that trouble too. I went on a job interview once with this in a job in Seattle, and I don't know anything about Seattle. I just know Shadowrun Seattle, and so I was there. And she's like, I live on Mercer Island.
Mhm,
Do you know Mercer Island? And I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, it's not Council Island.
mhm.
It's in Shadowrun. It's called Council Island. Do not say, just say you don't know about it, and don't act like you know it, you idiot. You're going to look so stupid to this person. And so she kept like talking about all these things I've heard
Mhm.
about.
It's like,
And it
yeah,
was
no,
so,
no, I don't know anything. I've
yeah,
never,
no, what is that?
I've never heard of it. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I've
Right,
never heard of Seattle until today. So,
right. There's a Space Needle there,
yeah,
right?
right.
She's like, yeah, I'm like right next to the Renraku Ecology, right? She's like, what? Um, no, so it's anyway, sorry, but it's cool because it's rooted in this real place too,
Mhm.
and that's another thing that my players get really into, and Dan specifically, one of my players, he plays Tina Bone Meal. She's a 9.5 foot troll bruiser
Love it.
who wants to be an actress,
Love it. Yes.
and so he has a lot of fun with that.
Mhm.
Like, how do I root like it's set in our world, but in the future
Mhm.
of our world from an 80s perspective. And
Uh-huh.
so he'll play with that a lot. You know, it's like um, what our actors, Sylvester Stallone's grandkid is like now someone he
Yeah.
community improv theater with or something. It's like, can do that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
it's cool because you can play with the real world a bit.
Yeah. No, that's so fun. So goofy. I love it so much. So freaking interesting. And I mean, like, this has been so good. And so I'd like to as much as I'd love to just entertain more thoughts and ramble on forever, we should probably, stay a bit on topic because we're about an hour and a half. It's fine.
I warned you.
Oh no, it's
To be
great.
fair, I
Oh,
warned you. I
you
this is what I
did.
do.
And I am not disappointed at all. This is fantastic.
Look, you sure you want to do this?
Yes, I do.
Um, I love it.
But so with Shadowrun, you mentioned some of the fears that you've had as a GM, with running the game, the fears with like the lore and stuff. Um,
Right.
from your perspective, do you have like any advice you would give people who would like to run Shadowrun and maybe may feel intimidated by the lore or even just the community around the game and stuff like that?
Oh yes. And and that's kind of what I've been trying to do. Use our platform,
Mhm.
if you will, to be pretentious about it. We don't have a platform. We're just a little podcast. But it's been nice is it's been inspiring people to play that have been afraid to, and so my advice is that to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, buy second edition or whatever edition. I love it. Oh, second edition. But like, let's be real, buy second edition. Um, any edition will work,
Mhm.
right? There are people that love fourth edition. They love the crunch. They're really big into crunch. They
Mhm.
love fifth edition. And there's some people that don't even love the crunch, but love that there's wireless and
Mhm.
stuff,
Yeah.
and they love that about it. So there's no wrong edition. But what used to upset me was that people would act like there is no simpler
Yeah.
edition, and I was like, there is though.
Yeah.
And so with second edition, that's kind of what you get out of it. And my advice to new people is that it exists.
Mhm.
That's my first thing. It exists. Second edition is really very, very simple.
Mhm.
It's as simple as you let it be.
Mhm.
And if you go, well, I wish there was a rule for dr- controlling drones from a
Mhm.
distance. Oh, they exist. You go get the
Or you could
source
make up
book of
your
Rick.
own.
Yeah, the book is very abstract
Mhm.
especially with rigor rules. Rigors, it's just sort of like, here's the stuff you can buy,
Mhm.
and you're kind of like, oh, how do I do this? And there's like one little like paragraph on it, but what I love, someone like me loves that.
Mhm.
That's total freedom to go. All right, well, I have my little like how D&D does, where it's like this is the difficulty chart
Mhm.
of numbers, right?
Yeah.
Like difficulty value,
Mhm.
I guess that's what it's called in D&D, where it's like this number is an average challenge
Mhm.
and this is a difficult challenge. You just look at those and that's your Bible.
Yeah.
And you go with like your rigor is flying drones around with their mind and shit, and you're just looking at this thing like, how hard is that?
Mhm.
That's the target number they're going to try to beat.
Yeah.
So sorry, going back to your story, was your question, away from my story and into your question. There, my advice is that second edition exists, a simpler edition exists, but to make it simpler for yourself, the thing that you really should do is look at the combat section,
Mhm.
read the beginning of the book, get you're not gonna be able to stop yourself
Yeah.
once you've started it. It's fucking amazing. Don't worry about creating characters right
Mhm.
away. They have archetypes. They have like sample characters in the book. Grab a couple of those
Yeah.
and roll some sample combat scenarios. Grab a buddy or whatever. If you guys just have a second, you can take the sample
Mhm.
characters and you can just go through some combat scenario. Once you have combat down, you've got the game.
Yeah.
It's a very unified system. Everything works the way combat
Mhm.
does. Um, but don't play as a rigger. Don't play as a mage or a decker at
Mhm.
first. Just grab some people, get really into like the cyberpunk vibe of it,
Mhm.
and learn the combat and
Mhm.
how that stuff works. And once that's kind of become second nature to you, and you're not slowing down a ton to look at what do I roll?
Yeah.
Is it my body? Once you have that kind of down, you've done that kind of fluid. Now introduce some magic in.
Yeah.
And now you realize it's the same exact premise.
Mhm.
It's just now we're looking at different values to see how where your target number comes
Yep.
from, kind of thing. And you can put that information kind of on your player a little bit. Like, okay, if you're a mage, I want you to kind of keep track of help me out
Yeah. Please.
and do this a little bit. That's always the bane of our existence, right? Is like, know the rules. Read the fucking
Yeah.
manual. Um,
Please read the rules.
but
Like I have introduced people to a game by just giving them a reference sheet because I know that they're not going to read the rules. And so I'm like, just at least something.
Mhm,
Have at least some
mhm.
grasp on how some of your facing information works because I'm doing a million things over here.
Yeah, and it's really that. It's paring it down. What's really great about Shadowrun and what's cool about it is that there's no classes
Mhm.
and there's no levels. You don't level your character,
Oh, yeah.
so you just can kind of improve your
Mhm.
abilities and stuff. And so because of that, what's nice about D&D and what makes it easy is that pretty much if you're starting with a level 1 character, that's the basic.
Yeah.
That's start with that, and then it gets more complex as you level up.
Mhm.
Shadowrun's kind of your character. You're going to always be this. You kind of start with all that front loaded a little bit.
Mhm.
And so what you kind of have to do is like put the training wheels on is like don't allow riggers or deckers or
Yep.
mages at first. Just play
Start
the
off
game.
simple.
Start off simple. That's my major um, piece of advice. And also just uh, don't get bogged down either. Like
Mhm.
as long as people are like, "Fuck, that's cool," you're winning.
Yeah.
You did it, right? Like, okay, did you get the modifier? Everyone, that was, oh man, that was one of the biggest like kind of confidence boosters I ever
Mhm.
got. Was I told someone like, I played this combat thing, but I got the modifiers wrong. I forgot to like, to include like these modifiers
Yeah.
for their damage or for whatever. Like I got it a little bit wrong. And the guy was like, dude, I've played this for 30 years. I'm always still forgetting modifiers. And I was like, oh, and it unlocked my
Yeah.
brain where it's like, that's going to happen.
Mhm.
Like obviously don't try not to do that.
Mhm.
Like try to be aware as possible. You're gonna miss stuff. And as long as people are laughing and having fun, like that's the fucking point,
Exactly. Yes.
you know?
You're gonna make mistakes. It's inevitable. Just
You're
roll
going
with it.
to.
Just have fun.
Right.
And
Right.
even then, I think that like if you make a mistake in like a ruling or whatever, and people have fun with it, and you find that hey, actually that was more fun than actually running the game the way it was supposed to be. You can also just
Totally.
go with that too. Like you don't have to play it the way that everyone else plays it. It is for your table. It is
Totally.
for your enjoyment. Play it the way that you enjoy it.
Right. And for that, and it might vary moment to moment,
Mhm.
right? Like, and that's that kind of how I play Shadowrun too, is like if especially deckers.
Mhm.
Deckers are the hackers in this game.
Okay, yeah.
They plug in and they can go into computer systems into virtual
It's so
reality and
cool
basically
as
be on this
well.
different plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, that gets a lot of grief. People they have hated the decking rules forever
Mhm.
in Shadowrun. And so that was one of my challenges too. And I started playing this game. I was like, I keep touting that this game is easy,
Mhm.
that there's a way to play this, and I haven't tackled Matrix yet. I need to tackle Matrix. And so in the second season, I did.
Mhm.
I read it. I read through it. I kind of got a understanding of how it worked, and I kind of figured out my own little way of tweaking it so that
Yeah.
it works for my table. Um, but that's kind of the way I play. If it doesn't make a difference, if it's not dramatic, like if you need to hack, I just want to like hack and see if I can like find anything about this guy,
Mhm.
right? Okay, let's just roll the dice and see
Yeah.
if you did it. We'll make it like one roll.
Yeah.
We'll see if you did it. But if now we're in this room and I need to hack to open this door, and if I don't open this door, like this poison gas that's coming through this vent is going to kill us. Like, okay, now we can slow this down,
Mhm.
and we're going to go through every single thing because we're going to make this moment, super
Yeah,
dramatic.
because that's what it
Like every
is.
success
Mhm.
matters and every roll. Yeah. And so you take like maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes to go over like 10 seconds
Mhm.
of real game time because every moment
I
matters.
love
And
that.
um and that's kind of how I run Shadowrun,
Yeah.
right? It's like an action movie. When the action slows down and all this shit is happening, that's where Shadowrun really shines too, because it's like it allows you to get there.
Mhm.
It's not like games where like, well, it's just a dice roll
Mhm.
and we see. It's like, no, okay, well, we're gonna roll this, and now we're gonna have this thing roll against that,
Yeah.
and it's like the drama just
And
keeps kind
yeah,
of
and you
piling
get
on
to
top of each
watch it
other. It's really nice.
unfold slowly over time, and then it's like, again, it does build up that even tension at the table, like, we are going through every roll, and everyone's just gonna be at the edge of their seats like, "Okay, is this actually gonna
Right,
succeed?" And then, like, every time they
right.
roll what they need, it's gonna be like, "Okay, but there's still 2 more rolls left." Like, there's so much more to
Ex-
go. I
exactly,
love it.
and it affects your actions going forward too,
Mhm,
right? It's like, okay, I was gonna do this, but oh shit, he's having trouble there. I might help him with that.
mhm.
It's such a fun time.
Yeah,
And
I love it.
and that's the key, is just like, if it's not going to be fun to watch somebody hack a computer, then don't make it involved.
Yeah,
Make it a dice roll
yeah,
and move on.
exactly.
Right? The book doesn't tell you to do that, but do that. Just do that if that's what you want to do.
Mhm,
That's my advice,
yeah,
is make it fun. And you have to play it a bit to know where those areas are to trim a little
mhm.
bit, but it doesn't take long to find it.
Yeah, and a
Um
lot of it will just
so
be if you like those, and this is where it's great to consume media that is, like, in the
mhm,
same realm as the games that you're playing, because you can even prep yourself for what those moments are. Like, I watch a bunch of 80s action movies and, like,
totally.
get it down, like, okay, where are the moments of tension?
Yeah,
Where are the moments that we kind of slow it down a little bit and like, go step by step, like, absolutely. No, I
right.
love that so much. That's so fun. And you can even do that in any game too, just make it more checks, build up that
Yeah.
tension, as long as it's, and that's where, again, it matters with your table, because some people would be like, "Oh yeah, that would be really cool to do," and some people would be like, "No, why? Like, we do one roll anyway." So there is obviously
Right.
table
It
relationships.
varies,
Yeah,
right?
like
It yeah, it's exactly. It's all subjective
Mhm.
in a way, but what I will say, a good selling point about Shadowrun is it has rules to support both
Yeah,
ways.
I love it.
Um, and that's kind of cool. Like there are games that are like a rules light
Mhm,
game that some loving person will be like, I'm having no fun with
mhm.
this, right? And vice versa. A game that's just so incredibly crunchy that someone that doesn't want to deal with all that is just having no fun.
Yeah,
I
it's like,
feel like
oh,
what's really nice about Shadowrun is there's a versatility
yep.
there. You can kind of pare it down. And talking to Tom Dowd, I learned that was sort of the point.
Mhm,
Whether it was worded well enough to let people know that,
mhm.
because there was an era of like, get good,
Yeah.
like, sorry, this is what they intended. It is supposed
Yeah.
to be hard, and a certain caliber of person can get it. Now, his point was like, no, I made this game watching action movies.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel like a fucking awesome bullet rain, bullet time action movie. And so that's why we built it
Mhm.
this way. And that really kind of, I felt, validated
Yeah.
me with the way I was running it away. It's like, when those moments, slow it down and here are all the rules to support
Mhm.
that drama build, that moment. But otherwise, just move,
Yeah.
just keep it
Just do
going.
what works, and I
Um,
love that too. Rules
yeah.
that support the game and the mechanics that support the game and the stories, and just all the happy brain chemicals. But I think though we are starting to get close to the end here, and seriously, this has been so
Hmm.
fantastic. And I have a end question that I always love to ask, and the funny thing is, I feel like you've answered it a few times throughout the episode, but we'll do it one more time, just for fun, because it's so great. And that is, It's a bit of a hard question to answer, but I'd like to see what you say. Why do you love Shadowrun?
Why do I love Shadowrun? Oh, that's a
Overall,
really
there are
good.
all these things that you love about it, but, like, if you had to, I guess, convince someone with just one thing, why do you love
Mhm.
Shadowrun to get other people to play it, to show them how much you care for the game? You know, how do you what do you love about Shadowrun?
I I love I love how unapologetically just weird and beautiful and punk it is.
Mhm.
Especially, I'm talking about second
Yeah.
edition kind of
Yeah,
specifically,
2nd
but
edition.
because that's kind of like I think, have I made that clear? But in general, just Shadowrun is this weird. It's got warts on it.
Mhm,
It's not beautiful.
mhm.
It's kind of this weird
It's a bit ugly,
and
like
asymmetrical. Yeah, there's a lot of things. It doesn't fucking care.
Mhm.
It just is what it is. Is it balanced? No. Is it fair this guy goes faster than you in combat? No. Is it fair that mage can literally explode you from inside your body with a fireball? No. But it's very unapologetic about
Mhm,
that. It's like, this is the game. This is the lore. This is how it works. And it becomes this very believable world
mhm,
because of that. It's just like, this is just how it
mhm,
is. There's no rules balance reason for it that's explained to you. It's just magic works that way. And fun little thing that I learned in the book club is that the guy that wrote the magic system was a practicing mage. He believed in magic, and this is
Oh,
his
really?
swear to God. He said his name was Paul Hume,
Mhm.
and or is he's still around. He was just tell Tom Dowd like, this is how magic
Uh-huh.
works. And so they were like, this is gold.
That's
And they're
so
just writing this
good.
into the game.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of believability there. But to again trying to strip it down to your question, I just love how it's a punch you in the face punk game
Mhm.
with cyberpunk wrapped around it, and then magic infused. So you just get this really ugly, gritty, uh, just badass game. It's just so.
It's an
You will see
experience.
if you ever
Yeah.
play it. It's like you're going to be like, it doesn't matter how long it takes to get through that session
Mhm.
and get through this. If you whatever, you're going to think it's like a movie that makes you think.
Yeah.
When you get out of it, you're like, I've never played a game that made me feel that
Yeah,
way.
what was that?
Yeah. Like in D&D, you're a little bit bummed sometimes if you didn't get into combat,
Mhm.
because that's kind of what that game is sort of geared for.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of get
I
around it
mean,
with
that's
social
just the big
situations and
focus. I
stuff.
mean, that's what everything
Yeah.
revolves around.
Right. Like shit, I didn't get to fight
Yeah.
anybody or whatever. Um Shadowrun, you don't feel that way. It's everything feels lived in and real,
Mhm.
and everything is it's just this feeling of like, you know, you're down. It's like a noir film.
Mhm.
You're this ugly character that's just scratching out an existence. But goddamn, do you really want to be that guy? You really want to be that guy though, because
Yeah.
that's fucking cool.
This
Um,
is like a whole
that's
love
why I love it.
letter to, like, Shadowrun 2nd
I
edition, and it's
love.
so
I
good. Yes.
freaking love Shadowrun. I mean, it was so formative to me, in terms of it was this weird. I'll tell you exactly. When I was a kid, I played the Genesis game. I literally was like, "What the fuck is
Yeah.
this?" It was. I turned the game on, and this huge cow skull comes on the screen. It's got this digital cyber circuit board
Mhm.
behind it, and it says Shadowrun. And I'm like, okay. And I hit it, and it's a fantasy game. It's like an RPG. But I got guns, and this elf dude is wearing a trench coat and shades, and it doesn't tell you anything. It just gets you into it. You go into it, you're going to a dark corner in a bar, and there's an orc that's giving you a sketchy job to
Mhm.
do. And I just was like, what the fuck
Yeah,
is
what am I
this?
getting into right now? Like
Right, but I couldn't stop playing. The music was so gritty
Mhm.
and cool, and the vibe was just felt very and to talk about the Genesis game just a second. Like what I loved about it was like the there was no like leveling,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it was like if you want to get into this room, like your brother died,
Mhm.
and this is the story of the beginning of the Genesis game. But like your brother died, and his stuff is in this hotel
Mhm.
or his
Oh, that's
apartment,
fun,
and the
yeah.
landlord won't let you in. until you have this much money to pay this guy's back rent.
That's fun.
And so you're leveling as you're trying to make the money to pay for this thing, but it never breaks that immersion.
Yeah.
It's never like, sorry, you have to be level 8 to get to the store. It's like, no, you need to have this money. And so when you play Shadowrun, the RPG, it all makes sense that way. It just feels this very much like it just makes sense. It's like, oh, well, of course.
I need the money.
You know, like of course I don't want to cast a level 12 fireball because that could knock me out. That'd put me to sleep, put anybody to sleep. So it's this very real lived in world that just is weird and it doesn't give a shit. And I love that. I love it.
Man, I really want to read this. I really want to play it. And good Lord. I hope that other
Please
people do
reach
too.
Out, let me know if you do. Yeah. If I want to hear everybody, Pink FoHowk on Twitter, message me. I want a picture of your book. I just want to know. I love the idea of people getting into It's one of my favorite things is seeing people that are like their eyes when they discover it and they learn like oh my God, what is this? This is amazing. You know, it's great.
It's so good. So yeah, everyone, I mean, I think this is just a formal invitation. If you want to talk about Shadowrun 2nd edition, go
in parentheses, but not really, but kind of, but not really.
Go over to Pink FoHawk, talk with Ben, show him your books, be like, yeah, you know, I love this game just as much. Start a conversation, get into it, because like I think that's the best thing about these is like the community that can build up over the love of a single game. Like I love this game so much. I know, right? I mean, that's what the coolest thing about this podcast is. I get to talk to people about games that they love. What other way is like that's like the best time to spend my time.
From all over the world.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we have in our Discord, we have people from, you know, Australia. We have people in, you know, England, and it's like
it's a shared experience. I love it.
Yeah. And we have like a shelfies room and people send their shelves of all their books and stuff. And it's just like, damn, it's cool to nerd out with like-minded people. It is. So yeah, invitation is open. Yes. My DMs are open but like keep it. Whatever. We'll keep it. Let's try to keep it PG, but like, you know, whatever. I'll if we're talking Shadowrun, I'll deal with it if we get beyond that.
I think that's a great place to end this episode.
Willow, thank you so much for having this. Was a lot of fun, and I really do love your podcast. I feel like you're doing a really like what I want to do for Shadowrun is what you're doing for just RPGs in general for people and like making it a less daunting experience. And I think that's needed and necessary and more relevant than ever.
Oh, for sure.
And you're great at it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I mean, if there is a time that you are like, hey, I really love this other game, let me know because I am more than happy to have you back on the show because this was fantastic.
All right.
No, just let me know. And as long as we haven't covered it before, and even if we have covered it, maybe in the future we'll do another episode on it. Who knows? The possibilities are endless.
Totally.
But yeah, no, let me know. And seriously, thank you so much. And this has been awesome. And I guess our kind of final moments here, again, let everyone know where they can go check out your show and where they can find you and all of that stuff, because they need to go listen to Pink FoHawk right now and hear about Shadowrun. Because if you just listen to this, why wouldn't you? Like, just do it, please.
Yeah.
It's a requirement.
Yeah. Please do not think I am I'm any spokesman for Shadowrun. If you don't like me and hate me, still check out Shadowrun. It's but if I did not annoy you, check out our podcast. We're Pink FoHawk. We played 2nd edition, as we said, and were nominated for an Emmy in 2022. Yeah. We won an Audioverse Award in 2022. So like, I'm not saying that. They said that. They are saying we're good.
And they're the professionals.
Yeah, you can check us out. Yeah, we did not win an Emmy. We didn't have enough fans to win an Emmy, but we got nominated, and that was really great. But yeah, check us out. We are Pink FoHawk. We release episodes every 2 weeks. We're in our 2nd season. It's a very small back catalog to catch up and be up to date. That's my way of like making the lazy thing a positive. There's not that many episodes. You can catch right up.
Absolutely.
And our social, we're everywhere on social media too. So we would love to hear from you. new fans and old fans of Shadowrun alike.
Yeah, and all of those links, of course, will be in the description of this episode too, so that ease of checking out Shadowrun and Pink FoHawk and all of that cool stuff, because it is required now. I'm saying it now. It is required. You listen to this episode, you got to this point, go check out Pink FoHawk and Shadowrun and go get the game. But yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate bullying our listeners into that. Thank you. I didn't want to do it, but that's great.
That's what the show is. We're bullying you to play other games. Go do it. But yeah, no. I think
the nerds have become the bullies. It's perfect.
It's amazing. But yeah, I think we are going to end here. So thank you everyone so much for listening. And thank you, Ben, so much for coming on and talking about Shadowrun.
Thank you so much. This was great.